The ocean is not silent. Beneath its restless waves lies the echo of forgotten empires, the ruins of gods and kings who once ruled with pride, now buried in silence. And among these sunken ruins, legends whisper of a curse euro, an ancient spell that binds Atlantis to the deep, guarding secrets no mortal was ever meant to find. But every curse has a witness, and Atlantis had its oracle. Forgotten by time, erased from history, her voice lingers like a shadow in the tides, calling out to those who dare to listen. Centuries after the waves devoured Atlantis, the world above dismissed it as a myth, a fable told to frighten sailors and inspire dreamers. Yet the sea remembers. And when the sea remembers, it does not forgive. Our story begins not in the grand temples of Atlantis, but in the present Dia Euro, on the deck of a vessel cutting through stormy waters, chasing myths that were never meant to be found. Dr. Alara Vane was no stranger to lost civilizations. A historian and explorer, she had chased the ruins of Troy, the buried temples of Egypt, and even the cryptic hieroglyphs of forgotten deserts. But Atlantis was different. Atlantis was dangerous. Every expedition before hers had ended in failure euro, or death. Yet Alara believed the myths held truth, that there was something real beneath the waves. What she did not know, what no one could know, was that she was being summoned. The storm came without warning. Lightning split the skies, waves roared like beasts unleashed, and the crew scrambled to hold the vessel steady. In the chaos, Alara clutched the medallion that had led her Haria Euro, a relic recovered from a Grecian cave, etched with symbols no scholar had been able to translate. All except her. The medallion carried the mark of the Oracle, a symbol of prophecy that had appeared in every surviving myth of Atlantis. The closer they drew to the coordinates the relic had revealed, the stronger the storms became, as though the sea itself rejected their presence. Hours passed before silence returned. The storm dissipated as suddenly as it had arrived. The vessel drifted into an unnatural calm, surrounded by waters that glowed faintly beneath the moonlight. And then they saw it. Shadows beneath the surface, colossal shapes like towers and arches, an entire city carved into the seabed. The impossible had been found. Atlantis. But the discovery was not a triumph. It was a warning. As divers prepared to descend, the medallion in Alara Euro's hand grew hot, searing her palm. She staggered, her vision blurring as whispers filled her Minda Euro, ancient words in a tongue she should not have understood. Yet somehow, she did. A Euro OU awaken what should remain buried. The drowned empire does not forgive. The curse is watching. A Euro she dropped to her knees, breathless, as the voice faded. The crew rushed to her, but she waved them off, insisting she was fine. Yet deep inside, she knew what she had heard was real. The Oracle had spoken to her. The descent began. Floodlights cut through the abyss as divers swam past stone pillars wrapped in coral and broken statues half swallowed by sand. The city stretched endlessly, as if time itself had paused the moment Atlantis sank. Streets remained intact, temples still stood proud, and at the city Euro's heart, a massive structure loomed, the Crown Hall, where Atlantis Euro's kings had once worn the Sunken Crown, a relic said to bind the empire to divine power. Alara followed the team into the ruins, but every step deepened her unease. The water grew colder, the silence heavier, and shadows moved at the edge of her vision. Then they reached Ida Euro, the throne chamber. The walls shimmered with inscriptions, still glowing faintly as though alive, and on the cracked marble throne sat the object of every legend, the crown itself. Golden, adorned with sapphires and obsidian, untouched by time, it pulsed faintly with a light that seemed to breathe. The divers stared in awe. Cameras flashed. Hands reached forward. But Alara stepped back, clutching the medallion. The voice returned, harsher this time. A Euro Oedo not touch what was cursed. The drowned empire waits for its vengeance. The crown is not treasury a Euro, it is prison. A Euro she shouted through the comms, warning them to stop. But it was too late. One of the divers lifted the crown from the throne. The ocean trembled. Statues cracked, sand erupted into the water like smoke, and a roar echoed through the ruins a Euro, not from any creature of the sea, but from the city itself. Lights flickered. The diver holding the crown screamed as his mask shattered, blood swirling in the water. Shadows surged like smoke, wrapping around him, pulling him into the darkness. The crew panicked, abandoning their gear, swimming desperately for the surface. Alara alone remained, frozen as the chamber seemed to come alive. The walls shifted, carvings glowing brighter, forming the image of a woman cloaked in veils, eyes burning with fire. The Oracle. Her voice thundered in Elora Euro's mind, shaking her to the core. You have awakened the curse. The drowned empire will rise, not to live again, but to drag the world into its grave. The crown is the key, and you are the chosen hand. You cannot escape the prophecy. The vision shattered. Alara gasped, coughing as she tore off her mask, dragged to the surface by panicked crewmates. But her eyes remained fixed on the ruins below. For in that single moment, she understood, Atlantis had not drowned by accident. It had been condemned. The Oracle was no mere Propheta, she was the jailer of the Chrono power. And now, the prison had been breached. The waves surged again, the calm broken. The ship groaned under the weight of the sea, as though something vast stirred below. The crew cried out, demanding to flee, but Alara knew it was already too late. The curse had been unleashed, and there was no running from the drowned empire. As the ship pulled away into the night, Alara stood alone on the deck, her hand tight around the medallion, her mind echoing with the Oracle's final words, the drowned empire waits. And soon, the world will drown with it. The storm did not follow them, it hunted them. All through the night, the sea howled like a wounded beast. Waves battered the vessel as though invisible hands sought to drag it under. The crew, once hardened explorers, now trembled with every crash of thunder, their whispers filled with fear of the thing they had disturbed. But for Alara, the fear was not of the storm. It was of the voice that had claimed her mind. Sleep was impossible. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the throne room of Atlantis, the golden crown, and the veiled figure of the Oracle. Her words repeated endlessly, a prophecy that refused to fade. The drowned empire waits. Soon, the world will drown with it. By dawn, the sea had calmed, but the ship was not the same. The diver who had touched the crown was gone, swallowed by shadows, his screams still echoing in the minds of those who had heard them. And worse, the crown itself, its image burned into their memories, had not remained behind. It was aboard. Somehow, impossibly, it had risen with them. The captain found it lying on the deck, glistening with seawater though untouched by rust or damage. No one dared approach it. The crew muttered that it was cursed, a death trap, but Alara knew the truth was far darker. The crown was not merely an artifact. It was alive. When night fell again, Alara stood alone before it. The crown pulsed faintly, breathing like a heart. Her hand shook as she reached out, not to touch, but to feel the air around it. The moment her fingers hovered above its surface, a shiver shot through her body. Her vision blurred, and the Oracle returned. But this time, she was not in water. She stood on dry land, amidst a city alive with light and splendor. Atlantis before the fall. Towers of marble stretched into the sky, streets glittered with gold, and people walked in robes dyed with colors the modern world had long forgotten. Music filled the air, strange and haunting, as though the city itself sang. At the center stood the crown hall, radiant and alive. And upon its throne sat a king, his head bowed beneath the weight of the sunken crown. His face was hidden, but Alara could feel the despair radiating from him. Around him, the Oracle stood, her veiled face unreadable, her eyes burning with eternal fire. Oilera vain, the Oracle's voice thundered, though none in the city turned to hear. You trespass in the memory of the drowned. Witness their fate. The vision shifted. The sky darkened, clouds rolling like smoke. The king lifted his head, and for the first time, Alara saw his eyes, black as the abyss, veins of shadow crawling across his face. He rose, staggering as though drunk on unseen power, and with every step, the earth trembled. The crown was forged not to rule. The Oracle whispered, but to bind. To harness the essence of gods fallen from the stars. Its power was greater than life, greater than death. But kings are never content with chains. They sought to wield it. The king raised his hands, and the sea obeyed. Waves rose high enough to swallow mountains, storms bent to his will, and the people of Atlantis fell to their knees in awe. Yet the Oracle did not bow. She stood defiant, her voice trembling with fury. You bind the abyss itself. Do you not see? The crown is no gift. It is the curse of the drowned. You think you command it, but already it consumes you. The king laughed, his voice booming like thunder. If Atlantis must drown to rise as gods, then so be it. And then the vision shattered. Alara gasped, falling to her knees as seawater poured from her mouth. She was back on the ship, drenched though she had never left the deck. The crew stared, horrified, as her eyes glowed faintly with the same fire she had seen in the Oracle Euros. A Euro o Ilera, a Euro the captain whispered, a Euro o what happened to you? A Euro she could not answer. For the truth was too heavy, the crown had not cursed Atlantis. The kings of Atlantis had cursed themselves, drunk on power beyond comprehension. The oracle had tried to stop them, had chained the crown in the depths as prison, not treasure. And now, Alara was bound to it, chosen by the prophecy that stretched across centuries. The next days blurred together. The ship limped back toward the coast, but the sea offered no peace. Whispers haunted the crew, shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, and one by one, they began to change. Eyes turned glassy, movements stiff, as though unseen strings guided their bodies. Some vanished entirely, dragged into the sea by unseen forces. The survivors turned to Alara, demanding answers. But she had none. Only the medallion gave her solace, its faint glow a reminder that the Oracle Euros' voice was with her still. She clutched it tightly, praying for guidance. And guidance came. On the seventh night, as the moon bled red over the horizon, the oracle appeared again. Not in vision, but in flesh. She stood at the bow of the ship, her veils dripping seawater, her presence so heavy the air itself trembled. The crew fell silent, too afraid to breathe. Alara alone stepped forward, her voice breaking. A Euro ohi me. Why show me these visions? What do you want from me? A Euro the Oracle Euros' eyes burned brighter. A Euro o because you are the echo. The crown has chosen you as vessel, and the curse now bleeds through your veins. The drowned empire stirs, and you alone may silence Ida Euro, or doom the world with it. A Euro Alara shook her head, tears cutting through the salt on her face. A Euro o a dona Euro t want this. I never asked for it. A Euro the oracle raised her hand, touching Alara Euros' forehead. In an instant, fire and water flooded her mind. She saw oceans swallowing cities, flames devouring kingdoms, the sky torn open as shadows poured through. The drowned empire did not rise to reclaim glory. It rose to drag all living things into its grave. And through it all, the crown pulsed, beating like a heart that would never stop. Alara screamed, collapsing as the vision consumed her. When she opened her eyes, the oracle was gone, and the crew stood paralyzed with fear. But her medallion glowed brighter than ever, burning her skin as if marking her forever. That night, she could not sleep. She stood on the deck, staring into the abyss, whispering to the waves. A Euro if I am the chosen one, a Euro she murmured, a Euro oh then what must I sacrifice to stop you? A Euro far below, in the ruins of Atlantis, the crown answered. Its light flared through the abyss, pulsing with hunger. And though Alara could not hear it, the drowned empire whispered back, its curse stretching beyond the ocean, searching for the first city to consume. The drowned empire had awakened. And it would not rest until the world was swallowed whole. The world changed quietly at first. The ship carrying Alara and her cursed crew finally limped into Port Euro, a battered wreck of iron and wood, its survivors hollow-eyed and trembling. They spoke little, their words fractured, haunted by the memory of the Chrono Euros awakening. Doctors who examined them found nothing wrong, yet their pulses beat too slowly, their eyes clouded like glass touched by the sea. The crown had not just scarred their minds, it had infected their very essence. Alara tried to disappear into the city, but escape was impossible. News of Atlantis had spread. Whispers of a sunken empire discovered, of a relic recovered, of shadows that killed men beneath the waves. Scholars, journalists, even governments demanded answers. But none of them understood what had truly been unleashed. The crown had not been found, it had found her. And the curse was spreading. It began with the oceans. Fishermen reported waters rising higher than tides should allow. Strange creatures washed ashore a Euro, half-formed, as though sculpted by something that had forgotten what life should look like. The dead surfaced in droves, whales with eyes like obsidian, sharks with gills that no longer breathed, schools of fish drifting lifeless beneath the waves. Then came the cities. Coastal towns woke to find their streets flooded though the skies were clear. Saltwater seeped through cracks in the ground, flooding basements, devouring crops. People spoke of whispers in the water, of voices calling their names, luring them toward the sea. Some obeyed. They walked calmly into the waves and never returned. Alara watched it all from afar, powerless. She spent sleepless nights deciphering the medallion, the only key left by the oracle. Symbols twisted before her eyes, forming maps, warnings, prophecies. But each answer led only to more questions, and the world drowned a little more each day. Her dreams grew darker. Night after night, she was pulled back into visions of Atlantis. Always the same throne room, always the same crown. The King Euro's laughter echoed through the ruins as storms ripped apart the city, dragging towers into the abyss. The oracle stood defiant, screaming against the tide, her veils whipping in the wind. One night, Alara dared to ask her, he show me this again and again. Why torture me? The Oracle's burning eyes pierced her. Because you must understand. The empire did not drown by chance. The crown cannot be destroyed. It can only be bound. And if you fail to bind it, the fate of Atlantis will become the fate of your world. Elara's voice trembled. How? How do I bind it? The oracle stepped closer. For the first time, Alara saw her face through the veil. It was not monstrous, but wary. Lined with centuries of grief, eyes burning not only with fire, but with sorrow. You are its vessel now. Only your blood can seal it. Only your sacrifice can chain it again. You ask how, Alara vain, but you already know the price. The vision broke, leaving Alara gasping in the dark. Sacrifice. The word echoed louder than any storm. She could not tell if it meant her life, her soul, or something worse. But she knew the oracle was right. The crown would not rest until it consumed everything. Already, she felt its hunger gnawing at her veins, whispering promises of power if only she would yield. She resisted but for how long? Her fears became reality when the world's powers turned their eyes on her. Governments sought her knowledge, demanded she hand over the relic. Soldiers appeared at her door, their boots echoing through her quiet refuge. She tried to warn them. She begged them not to touch it. But men blinded by greed never listen. The crown pulsed the moment they lifted it. Shadows surged, swallowing light bulbs, cracking glass. The soldiers screamed as their guns jammed, their radios shrieked with static. One by one, they were dragged into the darkness, their eyes glowing black before their bodies dissolved into water. Alara barely escaped with her life, clutching the medallion. She fled through rain-slick streets, the sound of the drowned chasing her in every puddle, every drop of water that fell from the sky. For the curse had grown stronger. It no longer needed oceans to move. Even the rain carried whispers now. She took refuge in an abandoned lighthouse, its beacon long extinguished. There, surrounded by maps and ancient texts, she searched for answers. Days turned to weeks. Outside, the world crumbled. Storms ravaged coasts, tsunamis devoured nations, and entire fleets vanished into the abyss. The drowned empire was rising, piece by piece, its ruins clawing back toward the surface. And still, the oracle haunted her. One night, as thunder rattled the lighthouse, the oracle appeared once more, not in vision, but in flesh, standing at the top of the spiral stairs. Her eyes burned brighter than ever, her voice shaking the walls. Time has come. The crown cannot be hidden. It cannot be given. It must be chained, or all will drown. Alara fell to her knees, tears burning her face. Don't know how. Tell me what to do. The Oracle's hand brushed her cheek, strangely gentle. You must go where it began. To the heart of Atlantis. Only there can the chains be reforged. Only there can you bind what was loosed. But beware, chilled the drowned empire will not let you succeed. It knows you are its enemy, and it will rise in full to stop you. Elara's breath caught. And if I fail. The Oracle's voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with grief. Then the world above will become as the world below. All cities will drown, all names will be forgotten, and the curse will live eternal. The vision ended. But the words did not leave her. That night, Alara stood at the cliff edge, staring into the furious sea. Lightning split the horizon, illuminating shapes rising from the abyss. Towers of marble, arches of coral, the skeleton of a city clawing its way back into the world. The drowned empire was not just awakening. It was returning, and she knew what she had to do. She would return to Atlantis. She would descend into the abyss where it all began. She would face the crown, face the curse, and either bind it forever a euro or drown with the rest of the world. The Oracle a euro's final words echoed in her mind as she prepared for the journey. A euro drowned empire waits. The chains lie broken, and only your sacrifice can decide whether the world lives or dies. A euro the sea was no longer a body of water. It was a graveyard. As Elora Euro's vessel cut across the waves, she stared into the depths, and the depths stared back. Shapes moved in the black a euro, vast and formless, larger than whales, larger than anything the world had known. The drowned empire was rising, its ruins clawing upward through the abyss. Towers half shattered by time reached like skeletal fingers, bridges of coral stretched across chasms of darkness, and statues eroded by centuries seemed to watch with empty eyes. But the true horror was not the stone. It was the voices. From the moment her ship crossed into those cursed waters, the whispers began. They rose from the sea, from the air, even from within her own skull. They spoke in tongues she did not know yet understood. Some coaxed her to surrender, promising peace in the depths. Others screamed in agony, begging her to flee. And among them all, one voice remained constant a euro, the voice of the oracle, urging her forward. A euro oh you carry the krona euro's hunger within you. You cannot escape it, but you can chain it. Only at the heart of Atlantis. Only where the empire drowned. A euro the crew she had gathered a euro, scholars, divers, and desperate men who had seen the world crumbling a euro, spoke little. They feared her, whispering that she was marked, cursed, chosen by something beyond mortal reach. She did not deny it. Her eyes burned faintly at times, glowing with the fire she had seen in the Oracle a euro's. The crown was inside her, gnawing, tempting. Every night she dreamed of wearing it, of commanding storms, of drowning nations with a thought. Every morning she woke trembling, clutching the medallion as though it alone kept her human. On the seventh night, they reached it. The sea glowed faintly, not with the light of stars but with the shimmer of ruins far below. The drowned city stretched endlessly, half buried in sand, half reborn in coral. And at its center, the crown hall loomed, taller than the rest, its marble walls cracked yet unbroken, its throne waiting like a mouth hungry for prey. The divers prepared, suits sealed, tanks checked, lights fixed. But even before they descended, one of them began to convulse, his eyes rolling back. He gasped for air though his mask was intact, clutching at his throat. When they tore his helmet free, water poured out a euro, not from his lungs, but from his very body. He collapsed, his skin bloated, his veins black. The sea had claimed him before he ever touched it. Fear spread, but Alara did not falter. She knew the curse would not allow them all to reach the city. Some were already claimed. Some were already drowned. She descended. The water closed around her, cold as death. Lights cut through the abyss, but the darkness always returned, heavier and thicker, swallowing the beams whole. Shapes flickered at the edge of vision a euro, human forms drifting slowly, their limbs stiff, their eyes empty. The drowned walked the streets of Atlantis, their bodies preserved by the curse, their mouths whispering soundless words. Elora Euro's breath quickened. They were not alive. They were not dead. They were bound, just as the crown was bound. Souls chained to the Empirea Euro's grave. The medallion burned against her chest, guiding her deeper. She followed its glow through broken arches, across avenues lined with statues of kings and gods, until at last, she stood once more before the crown hall. Its gates loomed taller than any fortress, carved with runes that shimmered faintly in the water. Her hand trembled as she pushed them open. Inside, time had not moved. The throne chamber glowed faintly, just as it had in her visions. The cracked marble throne waited, and upon it, the crown rested once more a euro, though it had been taken before. It pulsed with hunger, as if mocking her, daring her to draw closer. And she did. The moment she stepped inside, the drowned stirred. Shadows peeled from the walls, twisting into forms both human and inhuman. Faces half erased by water turned toward her, mouths opening in silent screams. They moved as one, circling her, trapping her within the chamber. Her mind filled with voices. Wear it. Bind us. Free us. Drown with us. The medallion flared, burning her skin, and the Oracle a euro's voice roared above them all. A euro oedo not listen. The crown is no gift a euro, it is the prison. You must chain it, or it will chain you. A euro Alara staggered, clutching her head. The drowned pressed closer, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. One reached out, its hand brushing her arm. Cold surged through her veins, her vision flickering. For an instant, she saw herself wearing the crown, seated upon the throne, the drowned kneeling before her as their queen. Power. Endless, intoxicating power. A euro oino. A euro, she screamed, tearing free. Her light flared, the Medalliona Euro's glow burning the drowned into ash. But more came. Always more. Shadows thickened, the chamber shaking as though the city itself lived again. The Krona Euro's pulse grew louder, matching her heartbeat, threatening to consume it. And then the oracle appeared. She stood before the throne, veils trailing like smoke, her eyes blazing with fury. A euro oiler vain. This is the moment of chains. Choose. Take the crown, and you will rule the drowned empire. Refuse, and you must give your blood to bind it. There is no other path. A euro Elora Euro's chest heaved, her lungs burning. A euro, oh, you want me to die. That a euro's what you a euro they been telling me all along. That a euro's the sacrifice, isn't a euro t it. A euro the oracle a euro's voice softened, heavy with sorrow. A euro, oh, it is the only way. The kings of Atlantis chose power and drowned the world. You must choose chains, and save it. Your life for theirs. Your blood for the crown. A euro, tears stung her eyes, lost instantly to the sea. She thought of the world above, the cities already flooding, the lives already lost. She thought of her own hunger for knowledge, the obsession that had brought her here. She thought of the crown, still calling to her, promising eternity if only she surrendered. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The drowned roared, shadows surging forward, the chamber collapsing around her. The oracle a euro's fire blazed, holding them back, but only for a moment. Time was ending. The drowned empire was rising. And Alara stood between salvation and damnation. The throne chamber shook like a living heart. Every stone quivered, every crack bled with shadows, and every drowned soul wailed in unison as the crown pulsed brighter and brighter. The drowned empire was awakening, its curse clawing for freedom, its hunger stretching far beyond Atlantis. Above the surface, storms howled, cities flooded, and oceans rose as if the end of the world had already begun. And at the center of it all stood Alara. Her breath tore through the mask, shallow and ragged, as her trembling hands hovered over the sunken crown. Its glow filled her veins, its whispers seducing her with every passing second. She saw visions a euro, herself crowned in gold and obsidian, storms bowing to her command, entire nations drowned at a thought. She would not be a scholar forgotten by history. She would be its end. Behind her, the drowned pressed closer, hundreds of pale, lifeless faces twisted with longing. They wanted her to take it. They begged her to free them. Their mouths opened in soundless screams, but their voices filled her skull. Wear it. Rule us. Bind us. Be our queen. The oracle a euro's fire blazed across the chamber, holding them back, but it was fading. Her veils cracked, her body flickered as though made of flame and smoke. She shouted above the storm of whispers, her voice thunder itself. A euro oiler vain. Do not listen. The drowned empire is not pleading a euro, it is consuming. If you wear the crown, you will not rule them. You will join them. A euro Elora euro's chest heaved, her tears dissolving in the saltwater. A euro, oh, you want me to die. You a euro they been preparing me for this from the start. You want my blood, my life, so the world can live. But why me? Why not someone else? A euro the oracle a euro's burning eyes softened with grief. A euro, oh, because the crown chose you. The medallion marked you. The curse binds itself to will, and yours was strongest. You sought the truth of Atlantis, and now you carry it. There is no escape, child. Only choice. A euro the chamber split, fissures tearing the marble, unleashing torrents of black water. The drowned shrieked, their bodies twisting into monstrous forms a euro, limbs stretched like ropes, jaws unhinged wider than any human mouth, eyes burning with abyssal light. They surged forward, clawing at the oracle a euro's fire, at Elora euro's flesh, at the throne itself. Time ended. Alara reached forward. Her hand closed around the crown. The moment her skin touched it, the world collapsed. The drowned screamed in triumph, their forms solidifying, their chains breaking. The oracle fell to her knees, her fire sputtering into smoke. And Alara a euro, Alara saw everything. The sea was gone. The ruins were gone. She stood in an endless black void, the crown melting into her skull, its hunger pouring into her soul. Shadows wrapped around her arms, her throat, her heart, whispering of eternity. You are ours now. You are queen of the drowned. You are death of the living. But the medallion burned. It seared her chest, cutting through the shadows like sunlight through storm clouds. And with it, the Oracle's voice thundered, not in grief, but in fury. You are not their queen. You are their chain. The void shattered. Alara gasped, clutching the crown with both hands. She felt its hunger clawing, felt it tearing at her soul. But beneath it, she felt something deeper, the choice the oracle had spoken of. She could wear it, let it consume her, and the drowned would rise eternal. Or she could bind it, but binding meant blood. Binding meant her end. Her body shook. Her lungs burned. The drowned shrieked, surging closer, their claws slicing through the water. The oracle screamed, her fire collapsing. And Alara raised the crown high above her head. For a heartbeat, she almost placed it on her brow. Almost. Then she drove it into her chest. The scream that tore from her lips was not human. The crown burned, melted, fused with her blood. Black water erupted from her veins, spiraling into chains of light and shadow. They lashed outward, wrapping around the drowned, binding their twisted forms, dragging them back into the abyss. The throne chamber quaked as the walls themselves turned to chains, locking the empire in its prison once more. The drowned howled, their voices shaking the sea. One by one they dissolved, pulled into the Chrona's light, their faces stretching in terror before vanishing forever. The city itself cracked, its ruins collapsing, its towers sinking deeper into darkness. And at the center, Alara floated, her body burning with fire and shadow, her eyes glowing brighter than the Oracle's. She was no longer Alara Vane. She was the chain. The oracle rose, her form steady once more, her fire blazing with sorrow and pride. She stepped toward Alara, her veils trailing like flame. You have chosen well, child. You are the sacrifice. You are the seal. The drowned empire sleeps again, because of you. Elara's voice was faint, trembling. Will it hold? Or will it rise again? The Oracle's eyes dimmed. Eel chains weaken with time. But today, the world is safe. And when the chains break again, another will rise, another echo, another sacrifice. The curse is eternal, but so is defiance. Elara's tears burned her cheeks. I don't want to be forgotten. The oracle touched her face, her fire strangely gentle. The drowned forget all. But the sea remembers. And I will remember you. The light consumed her. The crown fused into her heart. Her body dissolved into the abyss, her soul bound forever as the prison of the drowned. The oracle stood alone in the ruins. The drowned were gone. The city was silent once more. The chains held. Above the surface, the storms broke. The oceans calmed. The cities flooded by the curse began to recede. Survivors stumbled from ruins, never knowing the price that had been paid. And deep beneath the waves, at the heart of Atlantis, the throne chamber lay empty. The crown was gone. Alara Vane was gone, but her sacrifice lingered in the silence, a whisper carried by the tides. The drowned empire waits. The chains hold. But for how long? The oracle turned, her veils trailing through the dark. For the first time in centuries, her fire dimmed, her steps heavy with grief. She had seen many sacrifices, many chosen, many forgotten. But this one, this child who had sought only truth and found only chains, would haunt her forever. Far above, the world rejoiced at its salvation. But the sea remembered. The sea always remembers. And in the silence of the abyss, the faintest heartbeat pulsed, the crown, sleeping, waiting. The world celebrated its survival without ever knowing how close it had come to drowning. The storms faded. The tsunamis retreated. The oceans calmed as though nothing had happened. To those on the shores, it was a miracle, a natural disaster that had passed without explanation. Cities rebuilt, families mourned their dead, and the great powers of the world quietly buried their failed attempts to claim the relic. Within weeks, the whispers of Atlantis became nothing more than rumors again, stories told by sailors in dimly lit taverns. But the sea remembered. Beneath its endless waves, silence returned to Atlantis. The drowned no longer walked its streets, its towers lay broken and lifeless, and its throne chamber stood empty, the chains reforged. The sunken crown had vanished, its power fused into a single soul. And that soul had been Alara Vane. The oracle lingered among the ruins. She drifted through the broken streets, her veils trailing like fire in the water, her eyes dim with grief. For centuries she had guarded the crown, guided the chosen, watched them rise and fall. She had seen kings sacrifice kingdoms, warriors sacrifice blood, and dreamers sacrifice hope. But this one Euro, this child of the surface who had sought truth Euro, had burned brighter than the rest. She stood in the throne chamber, where Alara had made her choice. The echoes of that final scream still clung to the stones, and the faintest shimmer of light pulsed in the cracks of the marble floor, where blood and chains had become one. The oracle touched the stone with her hand, her voice a whisper. Euro, oh, you are gone, Alara Vane. But you are not forgotten. Not by me. Euro, for the first time, the oracle Euro's fire dimmed. Her eyes flickered with something dangerously close to humanity Euro, sorrow, longing, regret. She had always been fire, eternal and unbroken, but for a heartbeat, she felt small, fragile. Above, the world moved on. Scholars dismissed the events as storms, governments erased their failures, and people spoke only in fragments of myths. But sometimes, when the tide was high and the moon red, fishermen swore they heard a woman Euro's voice whispering in the waves. Some said it was a warning. Some said it was a lullaby. None dared listen too closely. Far across the seas, in a quiet coastal village, a little girl played on the shore. She was no one special, the daughter of a fisherman, her life destined for simplicity. Yet when she touched the tide, the water glowed faintly beneath her fingers. She laughed, thinking it magic, unaware of the fire that flickered briefly in her eyes. The villagers crossed themselves, whispering of omens. But the child only smiled, innocent, carrying a mark she did not yet understand. In the deep, the oracle felt it. A pulse, faint but undeniable. The chains held Euro, but they had shifted. The crown no longer existed as gold and stone. It lived in blood, in veins, in echoes passed from one vessel to another. Alara had sacrificed herself, but sacrifice never ends a curse. It only delays it. The oracle closed her eyes. Euro, so it begins again. Euro, she turned away from the throne chamber, her veil swirling like smoke. Atlantis would sleep for now, its drowned silenced, its empire forgotten. But the sea was eternal. The curse was eternal. And so long as men hungered for what lay beneath the waves, the crown would find another vessel, another sacrifice, another echo of its endless hunger. The oracle Euro's fire blazed one final time, casting the ruins in golden light. Her voice filled the abyss, a whisper and a thunder all at once. Euro, the drowned empire waits. The chains hold Euro, but not forever. Euro, the light faded. The sea swallowed the ruins once more. And in the silence of the abyss, faint and fragile, a heartbeat echoed. Not the heartbeat of Alara, not the heartbeat of kings long dead Euro, but something older, deeper, patient. The Krona Euro's hunger lingered, waiting for the moment the chains would weaken, waiting for another to seek truth where none should be sought. On the shore, the little girl laughed again, her hand dripping with glowing seawater. Far below, the drowned smiled in their chains. And the world above continued to live, never knowing how close it was to drowning Euro, never knowing how thin the chains truly were.